Welcome to Canada's podcast.
Hi, this is Celine Williams hosting from Ontario for Canada's podcast. Today I'm joined by two guests, Robb, founder of Howl, and Shauna Peddle, Associate VP of Citizenship at Cooperators. Thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
I'm excited. First of all, I love when I have two guests on the show, so full disclosure, this is always a fun conversation when there's multiple people. I will fully acknowledge my bias. But I am going to kind of start with each of you to get a little bit of a sense of who you are. So Adam, can you tell us a little bit about what Howl is and where it came from, why you started the organization? Just kind of give us a little bit of the background.
Sure. So Howl is meant to provide transformational experiences for young adults so that they can better find their path in life, their voice, hear their own voice. And but to really understand where that comes from is to understand my personal background, which is coming out of 15 years of high school teaching and in Alberta here, and watching many students go off with little to no sense of themselves just because of the way that education was done to them rather than they experienced learning. And so I felt that in Canada, we have this missing piece between the high school age and post-secondary to help people really figure out which direction they want to go. And when I started looking into this topic more and more, I found the stats that sort of aligned with what I was anecdotally seeing from my own students and the students in the schools where I worked, in that the dropout rate or switch program rate in Canada after 1 year of post-secondary is 60%. And I think that is reflective of the fact that in school, we aren't doing enough, in the education system, we aren't doing enough to provide experiences so that people know their own abilities and know what safe risk taking looks like. And, all these real life lessons that you learn outside of school, I always felt should be built into school. And so this was the motivation, was I'm going to give that structure, that one other step along this pathway of learning so that people can better know themselves and make better choices going forward. And I think the side effects of that, or the implications, are building better community members, because when somebody is on the right track in life, doing what they really love, they're more likely to contribute to their community. They're more likely to be a good family member, and there's so many other implications. And so that's a long answer, but Howl is this is this attempt to try and provide that for young adults in Canada, give them this set of experiences that's going to really allow them to test themselves, hear their own voice, and then structure a pathway forward for themselves.
So first off, good for you for being a high school teacher for that long, because I can only imagine how harrowing that was in moments. And I love teenagers. But it's, as you were speaking, it's really interesting because immediately what came up for me is I remember 1,000 years ago when I was in high school, feeling the pressure to make a choice of what my future would be when I was 15 or 16 years old. I had barely a sense of who I was or what I liked. Everything was the influence of the people around me. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor because that was the thing that was right? Like that was clearly I did not do that. That was not my path. But at that age, I didn't even know what the options were. I didn't even understand what some of the options were. And so I'm curious how kind of, I don't want to say structure, but how it sounds like it kind of addresses a lot of that, right? Like here's time to get to know yourself. How are some of the ways that it does that? What does this look like for someone who's thinking, I have some teenage kids that this might be interesting for at some point?
Sure. And I'll segue off of the point that you just made, in that young people, the same as us, we just don't know what we don't know. And if you were to poll grade 12s on what career they thought they were going to follow, it would probably fall into one of about 7 categories. It would be like Playmobil characters of nurse, doctor, fireman, teacher. It's just the things
lawyer
that they know, right? And and yet everybody, when you have these conversations, and I've been having these conversations, so many of them, is we all understand that that pathway is not linear, that finding your way, and that I'm doing a job now that I didn't even know existed when I was in high school, stressing about these courses, and we're not really preparing people for that, the resilience it takes to find your way. And so I guess the program that we create, and we run like short programs, exploration programs, but also a longer program, is this idea of you're going to meet a whole bunch of people who are really passionate about what they do in different areas. So Howl is non-prescriptive. We're not trying to send people into any particular industry, but we're trying to introduce them to really passionate community members, whether they're entrepreneurs, scientists, whether they're just, or not just, but community artists, whether they are in the medical field or social services, and to hear their stories, but also get a little bit of experience trying something with these people and walking a day in their shoes to feel what that's like. And so we allow youth to explore this in a safe environment. There's no pass fail, this overarching pressure over top of them to just go out there and learn for the sake of learning. And in the end, they are able so far to be able to be like, I want to be like Vicky. I want to be like John, who's studying grizzly bear conservation and going out in the field. And that's what I want to do. I just never knew that existed. And so how can I get on a path towards that? At the same time, there's, these crippling, I can't emphasize this enough, especially being heightened by the last few years of COVID, education and learning, the mental health aspects of that youth are facing right now are just unlike anything I've seen in my career. It's in a whole nother realm. And so providing a little bit of a step back for many youth right now, as counterintuitive as that sounds, is precisely what they need. And they may not even be able to articulate that right now, but if there's people probably listening whose son or daughter is facing some major challenges, and all we want is for our kids to be happy, and the successful career is part of that. But sometimes it's taking a good look at where they are and putting them in a position where they can receive support and learn more about themselves, and thus dealing with some of these mental health aspects of anxiety and the lack of knowledge about themselves and what they're capable of. And so putting them in that environment, getting them to the top of a mountain, not really a metaphor, because we do take them to the tops of mountains, can really, really change their perspective, but also hearing other youth stories about their own background, their own challenges. And we bring youth from every background imaginable and throw them all together. That is the most enlightening thing for them. They all of a sudden realize they're not alone in these challenges. They've created a community amongst this group of people from all over the place, and it just gives them that strength to go forward in life. They've kind of discovered a pathway, but they've also discovered a community of people who will be behind them as they walk forward.
So I'm curious, because you talked about some of the challenges that, and Sean, I promise I will get to you in a minute, that you talked about some of the challenges that the youth are facing. What were some of the challenges? What was the experience for you transitioning from a high school teacher to running a business? Because that is a whole set of challenges in and of itself, as I'm sure anyone who's done it will attest.
Yes, and Shauna always has a good laugh about this, but I started when I stepped away from my teaching career and sat down September 1st of 2021 to look at whether I could help to create a program, I literally typed in to Google like how to start a new program, and like I had zero knowledge of what it took to start a new organization, a new business, or a nonprofit. And I think when I was telling my students what I was going to do when I was stepping away, because I worked with them on real community projects, they had a good laugh and they were pointing the finger at me and they said, now you're going to know how it feels to step out there into the unknown and have to talk to experts and research and figure out which direction and sort of like narrow down what you're trying to do and then work on that in tangible steps. That's what I was really good at teaching, but then like, doing it myself was a real challenge. And it's been a wild ride. It's been very fast, but I have made it a point, a step one, to surround myself with the best people possible, supportive people, but also people with different skill sets than myself and mentors and all sorts of things. So my network is quite big and I rely on that entirely, including Shauna, of course.
It's astonishing how often when speaking with entrepreneurs, the community and the support comes up as being incredibly important to any version of whatever their version of success is. So I love that you brought that up. I'm wondering, what was it that you said that September 1st of 2021, you sat down and you were like, this is what I'm going to do. What triggered that? Where did that come from? What was that? This is the change for me.
Sure. Well, I definitely touched on the fact already of watching students go out into the world. And so 15 years of that and then keeping track of many of my students and the challenges that they were facing, even if they went through and got a degree or a diploma already, and then getting out into the field and being like, whoa, no, this is not what I envisioned my life to be like. And then they might, suffer some real life challenges as a result of that. So there's a whole spectrum of youth out there trying to find their way, and there's not much support available to them, even in post-secondary, where we assume they're going to get this guidance and support and direction. From all accounts, it's not there. It's more transactional in nature in a post-secondary setting, with the exception of a few cases. And so wanting to give more support after the age of 17 or 18, which when you think about it, obviously people need more support than that. So the other big motivation was, I've been thinking about this for many years, talking about it and probably being really annoying to my friends and family about this idea, as many, I'm sure, entrepreneurs have done. But it was my partner, for sure, Megan, who gave me the kick in the pants, who said, okay, you've been talking about this long enough. Now it's time to like get out there and do this. And we figured out a financial plan where I could step away and try this. And that was a huge step away. So it was committing to having no income until I found income, which I'm sure many people can relate to. And but I think where it really boiled over was stepping back from my work, as strange as this sounds, during the COVID learning period. So when I was sent home, I'm usually very active in the school, nonstop, working 18 hours a day sometimes, and then you're sent home and we're doing this online kind of learning, and I'm not an online educator by any means. And it was just that second, that room to breathe, where I was able to recapture my thoughts and think of like, maybe it's time. And I tell that story because I think that we underestimate that time to step back for a second of how powerful that can be. And for youth who've been on this trajectory of like doing essays and studying for math tests and doing everything that they think that they need to do to be successful, sometimes it's that step back to really gain clarity on what comes next.
Absolutely. And I think that's very important and insightful for everyone is that we tend to, kids do it with school, adults do it with job and work and whatever. We just tend to kind of plow through, right? What's the next thing? Elementary school, middle school, high school, college, university, job, next job, next role, leadership. We just kind of plow through. How often do we take a step back and go, is this what I want to be doing? Or reflecting in any way? So I think it's really, I appreciate you saying that, because I think it's a really important note, let's call it, for anyone who's listening, that moment matters and taking that time matters.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, one last thing is the overall anxiety, whether it was during COVID and lack of social situations, but also the overall anxiety of, these massive societal issues around things like climate change that youth are feeling, but not really. They have an understanding of what climate change is, but not really any understanding or way to apply themselves to actually creating solutions in any tangible way. And that can be a key way you lose hope, is when you feel like you have no way of creating action in your own life that aligns with your own pathway. And that's obviously not yet a part of what the education system is. And then the second one, major one, is truth and reconciliation, and just this overwhelming news that year after year, we're kind of uncovering these stories, uncovering the truth of these stories, and youth are feeling this and they don't know what to do about it. They don't know what it means to reconcile. They don't have an opportunity to reconcile. So non-Indigenous youth or Indigenous youth, everyone wants to move forward with this, but there's no opportunity and there's no understanding of what that actually looks like. And so I think that was the other motivating factor, was maybe we could create a program where they actually learn and have the opportunity to move forward on those topics in their own journeys. Yeah,
I love that. Thank you I think that's an important addition. So thank you for adding that on, for sure. Shauna, I want to ask you, I have two questions. The first one is, I'd love to know what the citizenship department is and what being an associate VP of citizenship means, because that sounds fascinating. And as part and parcel of that, can you tell us a little bit about what Cooperators does and what you're out there in the world putting into the world? There we go.
Sure. There's so many things that Adam said that I could respond to and react to. So forgive me if I say a lot of the same words that he did, because he did it so well. So I first of all, I too wanted to be a doctor when I was in high school, and I too did not become a doctor after
Perfect.
high school. I grew up late 80s, graduated high school, and that was what you did. You did one of six things. So Adam, to your point, you're bang on. And I think that my degrees are actually in biology and forestry. And I spent many years in consulting and working in communities and working with people. And I had the same kind of epiphany that about 7 years ago, I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't run this race anymore. I can't work these hours anymore. I need to be home. I need to be with my kids. I need to be doing good work in the world. So I had a major career change when I was in my early 40s. And it was because it was driven by this desire to do good somewhere, to help someone, and to help myself as well, I think. So what citizenship is, how I ended up here at Cooperators, we are a financial services provider. So we do insurance, we do investments, we do advice. We work with people to help them plan for today and for their future. And we are, as a cooperative, a little bit different. We don't have shareholders. We're owned by our members. We have a different way of looking at the world. So it's a very long-term view, both from a financial and a business perspective, but also in how we react and we relate to our communities. So the work that I do, it's really about how we show up in our communities and in the society around us. And we really focus on empowering communities through investments, through volunteering, and through, like with Adam, those collaborative partnerships in ways that are sustainable, but also help us to support our business objectives. And we are in a bit of a leadership position in Canada because we give about 5% of our income before taxes away every year. We invest in the community, we invest in our members, we invest in our company, but 5% of that goes to nonprofits, charities, social enterprises, and other co-ops to really build up and empower our communities. And our team focuses on a few different areas: mental health for youth 18 to 25, an inclusive economy, which is really about employability and skills training and supports to get into good and sustainable jobs for underserved youth and people with mental health challenges, and environmental resilience. So helping people and communities to be more resilient to a changing climate, either through adapting to it or mitigating. So there's so many overlaps between our vision of social impact and our purpose, our company's purpose, which is around financial security for Canadians and their communities. So much of that overlapped and really meshed when we talk to people like Adam and we see organizations that are helping young people to navigate this incredibly difficult time. And my job is to find these partnerships and to make them happen and to make them stick so that we keep our partnerships over the long term and we continue to do good work.
It's astonishing the difference that an organization can make when they're not, but this is a, forgive the language around this, but they're not, quote, beholden to shareholders or that anonymous, Wall Street person where you have to hit this in a particular quarter. When you have, what Cooperators has in terms of being able to design the work they're doing to be sustainable and to have a long-term view, not the 3 or 4 years, this is the CEO's impact that they're going to have, and then they're out and someone new is in. It sounds like it's incredibly different than a lot of the businesses that we think of because Cooperators is a big business, it's a big company. So it's different than what we often think of as that's how a big company works.
It is very much a culture, and it's very much how we operate as a business. So from the CEO right on down, everybody understands the value of what we do, that we're driven by cooperative values of autonomy and self-help and equity and equality and democracy. That's why we come to work every day. And I would hope that the majority of people that work for us feel the same way, that we're driven by a different purpose. We don't come in every day just to make the company money and to make our shareholders money. We make our business money. Absolutely. We still have to be profitable to be successful. Sure. But my company being profitable means I get more money to put back into our community. And that's an incredible driver to come to work every day. It's an incredible gift to be able to do.
Absolutely. It's very different than your company being profitable means that some anonymous shareholder gets an additional dividend of that's a very different driver at the end of the day.
It's a very different driver.
I think I appreciate calling that out because we have a lot of misconceptions and old ideas when it comes to how businesses and leadership work. And Cooperators is clearly proving it wrong.
We've been around for 75 years. We were created to meet unmet needs, and we continue to address them every day through products, through services, through our partnerships, through how we support our employees. Mental health is a huge driver for us internally as well as externally. We try to make things better for our people as well as for the communities that we work in. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm curious how you learned about Howl, how, where the connection came from, how you, I'm going to determine, I don't necessarily mean every deciding step, but kind of determine that this is a place you want to spend some time and energy and money and all that good stuff.
So we have our corporate giving. So we have a certain amount of money that we're able to give to organizations every year, but we also have a community foundation. And that community foundation hosted an initiative that I worked on for a couple of years that was called Pathways to Employability. And it was really focused on helping young people in COVID recovery, knowing that young people were the hardest hit, both from job losses, educational stoppage, anything that had to do with the economy, young people were being the hardest hit. So we developed an employment program that was 3 years in duration and that was really focused on supporting young people to get into jobs. So not necessarily skills training, but soft skills training, resiliency. How can we help them to be more comfortable and confident and moving into their next steps of their life? So we were definitely on the lookout for partners that would be able to fit into that mold for us and be able to help us to help young people to support that work. So when an organization calls or emails, and we get a lot of these across all of the aspects of the work that we do, we get hundreds of requests every year. And we typically focus on national level initiatives. We typically focus on ones that fall within our areas of impact. And once you get through that kind of shoot, it's then whether or not there's a fit. And we have checklists, we have ways that we can have our finance team vet an organization. We do all of that. Then at the end of the day, it's about fit and it's about gut feeling. And it's about just understanding that somebody is really bringing something cool into the world that meshes with us as an organization. It'll help us to meet our goals. And they really need our support to be able to take it to the next level and to be able to do the good work that they need to do. So you can't train people to do that. I'm very lucky that I have a team that's really good at it, that understands. A lot of our team came from the nonprofit world. So we understand what it takes to run an organization. We know what it takes to start up something and to try and sell that to someone. So we're always, I think, probably a little bit more respectful of the way that organizations come to us looking for money. We know what you need to be able to make things happen. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of us do rely on that gut feeling of just, is this a person that I could work with? And do I truly believe in the work that they're going to do? And Adam came in, as he mentioned, he came in at the beginning through my boss, my VP, Chad, and had an initial conversation with him. And within minutes, I had an internal message from Chad saying, you need to talk to this guy. He's at the beginning. He doesn't know where he needs to go yet. He doesn't know what he needs to be supported. We need to talk to him. And within a couple of days, Adam and I were talking. And within 10 minutes of that conversation, it was, like he said, we just knew that this was something that we could help support.
We were talking a little bit before we hit record, and I think there's a lot of things that I love about this story, but one of the things that stands out, and I mentioned this before, is it's so nice to hear someone in a leadership position in an organization talk about the gut feel and talk about those intangibles, because at the end of the day, these are, Shauna, you are a real human. The people who work in a big company like Cooperators, they're real humans. And to have a face that is approachable, a person that feels like you can connect with them, makes a huge difference across the board. I'm sure Adam would agree with that. But it's also unexpected quite often when people reach out to a big organization.
Yeah. I think you're right. I hear this quite often. I do.
It was definitely unexpected. I think that for myself, with no experience in putting a big idea out there as an entrepreneur or creator of a new program, it wasn't necessarily the specific outcomes I would be able to talk about. And so I felt nervous about that. I came at it from a position of, this is everything that I've done in my life, and this is everything that I know, and I'm speaking on behalf of all of these youth behind me who need these things, and I hope this is coming across that this is coming from a good place, and then immediately with several folks at Cooperators, actually, there was just this genuine feeling of, we hear you, we hear who you're representing, and we see that too. And it was very affirming of my life's experience in this field, but also very, I would say, like, inspirational, I guess, to know that people in the financial world were at a level themselves where they were concerned about these issues that I was seeing, and were in a position maybe to do something about it financially. And so I think for me, it was I was blown away by the humility of these folks, and of admitting themselves that we're not the people that are going to create these programs, but we're going to identify the places in which we could push some funds to, so that we could really maximize those funds and be able to see some wonderful results. But to be totally frank, I was blown away that there was someone like with as big a heart as Shauna working in a position like that. I don't know why, but I just felt like, I might have to speak in these really numeric terms to like get across my like passion for this topic. And it wasn't really that. It was, who am I and where do I come from? And who are the voices that I'm trying to speak for and trying to elevate. And I think they recognized that right away. And so, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but it was just like such a relief to connect on a human level to somebody in that position in the corporate world. And it's been a wonderful relationship. And I mean, it kind of transferred, and this is kind of a little side story / this is my commercial for the cooperators. But I also, as an organization that was taking youth out onto the land and for new experiences, and we were starting up very quickly, and it became very clear that as a new organization that it was going to be very hard to get insurance. And so this is where this like story kind of continues. And so I was going through all these hoops to try and get insurance for a new company. Like I said, trying to take kids or young adults into situations where insurance companies are generally like, I don't want anything to do with that. And we were actually told that a few times. And so I just, I reached out to Shauna and said, hey, do you also like give advice on how I can get some insurance for our new organization? And she said, absolutely. Let me connect you with this person and this person. And all of a sudden I'm talking to Christina in Calgary, and I'm like, Christina, we're in serious trouble. This program is set to start in, I think it was like a week or 2 weeks. And we have zero insurance right now. We have youth coming from across Canada to go in this program. And she said, she's like, okay, I hear you. I'm stopping everything else I'm doing right now because I know how important this is to you, and I'm going to walk you through this, and we're going to get this done. And I was like, I don't know about you, Stoney, but I'm not used to really, really good customer service. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second here. Like, this is crazy. And then she did it, and they took care of us, and we received, wonderful insurance package. I never thought I would say the word wonderful insurance package. That's not really too exciting, I know, but it really is. It's exciting because we wouldn't have got off the ground or exist right now without that. It was like a key piece to all of this. And so I was just wrapped up in this feeling like I was being taken care of as a person trying to do something good, trying to help elevate others, like I said. And I needed that extra support, and I got it. And it was wild, that feeling of being supported that way. So sorry, that's a side story. I said I would do lots of side stories. I hope that's okay.
We love side stories, and it's it's a perfect side story because I have a question for Shauna based on that, but also it highlights, again, it kind of reinforces the importance of that human element that is at work that Shauna, you clearly bring, and that Christine, was that her name? Brought, I hope I got that.
Yeah.
Okay. That brought with the transition, right? It is that Shauna is not the exception at Cooperators, where Shauna's the one real person who's the face of Cooperators, right? But that it's consistent, and that does speak to the culture, and it does speak to the difference. And it's clear that, you had a very particular experience, Adam, that was unexpected and positive. And that is a wonderful thing to be able to highlight in a story like that, because it's not always the case with insurance for those of us who have had the benefit of dealing with some insurance companies over the years. Which, Shauna, I have many questions for you, but I do want to ask this question it sounds like there, in transitioning to in connecting Adam with Christine, that it was really clear that this was there was an area of specialization here. Let's put it that way when it came to insurance. So why does cooperators offer this or have this or is able to customize in these ways when it sounds like most places were not able to accommodate? So this clearly is something different and unique.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a product that's called Community Guard, and it is specific to nonprofits, social enterprises, charities, community organizations that are looking to be able to ensure their activities. And we didn't have this as a product over the years. And about 20 years ago, we have community advisory panels, which are made up of residents across the country. Some of them are our clients, some of them aren't. They come from all walks of life, and they help to guide how we serve. So every few months, they get together, we talk about products and needs in communities, and they are our eyes and ears across the country. And about 20 years ago, the group in Moncton, New Brunswick, said this would be a really cool idea, that if we could, they had been hearing that organizations were having a hard time with insurance. So we built one. We decided that this was something that we could offer. We'll give it a try, test it out, piloted it for about a year, and it's been an offering of ours ever since. So it was driven by community. It was driven by what they were hearing on the ground as being the needs that weren't being met by anybody else. So we developed a product to fit. And I think it turned out in Adam's case to be exactly what he needed at the right time. And since then, I now have another maybe 5 or 6 of our partners that we've been funding and are now also insurance clients of ours as well, because of the experience that we had with Adam. So it not only helped him, but it helped a whole bunch of other organizations, because I was now thinking as I was talking to them, do you guys have insurance? I mean, I don't sell insurance. I know nothing about insurance. I connect them to my experts that can do that for them. But even just knowing that this was maybe a need that they were having is something that we could then tailor a little bit more of a conversation to, so that we're supporting them financially and helping them to actually offer their service, but also at the same time being able to ensure their activity.
Beyond this idea of changing I'm going to say idea again because repetitive, changing the idea of partnership or progressing or evolving this idea of partnership, is there advice or suggestions or avenues that you would suggest to entrepreneurs who, may have been where Adam was a year ago, who were looking for money, support to figure out what they don't know in the, changing careers, for example, what they may not need? Is there any, what could you suggest to them, Shauna?
I think if anybody's just spent the last little while listening to Adam, it is to find your passion, to find the thing that you are absolutely driven by. And it can't be money, and it can't be laurels, and it can't be title. It has to be something that makes your heart sing every day. And that's quite obvious with Adam. Every time we talk, all I get from him is this passion about the work that he's doing. So that would be first, is to find what it is that you're passionate about and actually follow that. And then to be authentic about it. I mentioned earlier that we get hundreds of requests for funding every year. What Adam did was understand what we did, was to figure out what's important to cooperators, what programs do they have that could fund me, and how do I connect to what they're doing on the ground and what's important to them. So it was a cold call. Absolutely it was, but it was a targeted cold call. So that when I opened up his email, I was reading through it and thinking, wow, yeah, absolutely. So that by the time he and I actually spoke, I knew, pretty good feeling that this was going to go well. A lot of those requests don't do that. They're very generic. Quite often they have another company's name in the title or somewhere in the text. They just don't take the time and the effort to be able to target that. And if you're looking for money, you need to target that, because you need to understand our side of the world, which is we don't have a lot of time. We get a lot of requests, and we have a very targeted field for funding. Typically, most companies will be the same. It's not just us. They'll have a very narrow focus area that they tend to put their time and their effort into. And if you don't match that, then we have to say no. It's not that we don't want to. I could fund everybody, but I can't. Everybody's cause is valid. But if it doesn't match what we're doing corporately, I'm just not able to do that. So taking the time to actually learn what a potential funder or a partner is looking for is very, very important. And then just bring your best self to that conversation. You don't need to wear a suit and tie. You can wear a t-shirt and be hanging out at a hotel. It doesn't matter. It's just bringing your real self to that, being open and honest and vulnerable on both sides. I would give the same advice to any corporate leader as well. Go into it with your whole self. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least give it a try and then be honest as well. Follow up quickly, either yes or no, and make that decision happen. Don't let an organization languish for months on either side. Make sure that if you're going to have something happen, either way, yes or no, just do it quickly afterwards.
I appreciate that. And I love that you said show up in a t-shirt and just be vulnerable, because I think, again, right. Adam is like, t-shirt right here. This is what we're doing. But
it's a Howl t-shirt. It's a Howl t-shirt.
Which is exactly what it should be. But I think it's important, people step into, again, especially with big organizations, they step into, I need to wear a suit and be not me. This is not who I am, but this is what's expected. This is what they're going to expect. And I think that we're always better off to show up as ourselves and walk away, even if it doesn't work out, knowing that we were ourselves and it was in alignment with who we are. We weren't performing for someone else, than to perform and maybe you get the money and then it doesn't work out. It doesn't feel right. And there's lots of stories of that out there. So I think I really appreciate you emphasizing that, because the entrepreneurs who are listening to this, who are thinking, I need money or funding or support, it's not worth not being true to who you are to get that. Doesn't work long-term in my experience.
Perfectly said. I think that if you're coming looking for anything, even if you're coming and looking for insurance, you have to be able to talk to the other person on the phone and treat them like a real person. We talked earlier, Celine, before you started recording, about power dynamics, and that there is always going to be a power dynamic. Mm-hmm. As a funder, we hold the cash. But as an entrepreneur, as a new person getting into this, as somebody who's trying to start an organization, they also have a ton of power that I don't think they recognize they hold. And that power is around knowing what needs to be done on the ground. I don't know that. I sit in my office and I look out in the world and I hope and pray that somebody will come to me and tell me what I need to focus on. That's where the organizations hold the power. The goodness of what you want to do and where you want to go and what you want to be is the power. I hold the money, but anybody can hold the money. So don't ever short sell yourselves and think that it's going to be this white tower person who's going to be making these decisions. It's a partnership, and a true partnership means both sides bring stuff to the table.
Yep. In this case, I'm not saying everyone in the world, but in this case, you're looking for a win-win where it's not a power over power under dynamic. It is a win-win, and that is a partnership. It's really clear how passionate you are about this, Adam, and I really appreciate you bringing that and sharing that. And Shauna, I can completely understand how getting on the phone with Adam, you'd be like, yeah, let's do this, because it's evident that this is incredibly meaningful and incredibly impactful. So I'm going to ask this question, Adam, where can the young entrepreneurs who are listening, who have now succumbed to your pitch, where can they find more about Howl?
Well, if you Google the Howl Experience or experiencehowl.com, you can find our wonderful website filled with all of our programs. We're starting our first full semester program this January, where youth from across Canada will come together for 4 months in the Rocky Mountains and take a deep dive into understanding this community here, the ecosystems, the cultural lenses, the issues facing this community, and all the wonderful people in this community who are trying to make it a better place and sustainable place to live. So that's my invitation. I guarantee it'll be better than any university 4-year program wrapped up in 4 months. We won't give you a certificate. I'll give you a certificate. I can make one if you want, or give you a mark or something like that if that's necessary. But it's more about the real learning opportunity. What is a community? How does it function? And who am I within a community? That I think people need to take a step back and pay more attention to.
Very cool. Thank you. And Shauna, where can people find out more about cooperators, but also about the citizenship part of cooperators? Because that's incredibly cool.
I loved what Adam just said about being part of a community and how you fit in. Thank you. That was beautiful. So we are cooperators.ca. On our website, there's a section called About Us, and then you just drop down to communities. You can also just send us an email. It's community@cooperators.ca. And we're happy to talk to anyone. We do tend to focus our community giving, our community foundation. We do tend to focus on community organizations, but we're happy to talk to people. And we'll even direct them to insurance advice if they need it.
It's a real partnership. This is what we keep coming back to. It's a real partnership. Thank you both for chatting with me today. I've really enjoyed this. It's been lovely to get to know both of you and to learn more about what you are up to in the world. So thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And for anyone who is listening, thanks for listening to Canada's podcast. Like, comment, and subscribe to all our channels to get the latest podcasts from entrepreneurs across Canada.